Without further ado, I would like to give the stage over to your moderator, Angel Alvarez. Angel is a comic writer and artist and art educator from San Jose, California. While operating his art business, Mofico Studio, yeah, Angel writes and draws the environmental webcomic, Trafts, and helps produce the art and cultural newspaper, the Boston Compass and the BCN Comics, which showcases local artists experimenting with the newspaper strap form. He currently teaching comics and illustration at a Montserrat College, College of Art. Thanks for coming to MICE and enjoying the panel. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much to Dasha, one of our many visual narrative interns, and just really another round of applause for them, because this show would not be running as smoothly as it is without them. All right, welcome to Maximalism and Minimalism, Spectrum of Style. That's maximalism and minimalism. More is more, less is more. I was really excited to take on this topic because it's something, especially as somebody that struggles with anxiety, I think a lot about is like how much to share, how much to throw out there on the page, how much to hold back, and it's a when you think about maximalism and minimalism, they're frequently talked about in terms of like opposition, one is a reaction to the other, and there's in the trends of like when one is more popular, like, and the kind of labels that could appended to them, like minimalism as sterile or boring, or maximalism as gaudy and showy. But in comics, it is a spectrum, and comics is a spectrum. It's a medium that can carry a lot. And with us are a wonderful panel of artists and writers who work between themselves in a variety of styles with a variety of detail, but also within themselves showcase a really tremendous handle on presenting and balancing visual information. And so here are our guests. First off, we have Tommi Musturi. Tommi Musturi is a Finnish artist, editor, and publisher, most known for the graphic novels The Book of Hope, Samuel, and his current project, Future, due to be published by Fantagraphics in 2024. Musturi has published over 40 books, fanzines, magazines, artist books, and sketchbooks of his own, participated in over 250 global exhibitions, and as an editor, worked on over 300 publications. Recently, in 2023, he has opened a bookstore, Stuff, on the countryside of Finland. Musturi lives and works in the village of Siro, and is a part of the Helsinki-based contemporary comics collective, Kuti Kuti. Welcome, Tommi.
Thank you.
Whit Taylor is an Ignatz Award-winning cartoonist, editor, and public health educator from New Jersey. Her comics have been published by Zap Books, The Nib, The New Yorker, Radiator Comics, Rosarium Publishing, Silver Sprocket, and others. She is currently serializing her webcomic, Dead Air, on Patreon. Taylor and Joyce Rice's public health history graphic novel, The Greater Good, will be published by First Second in 2025. Welcome, Whit. Sophie Yanow. Sophie Yanow is a California-based cartoonist whose work includes the Eisner Award-winning graphic novel, The Contradictions, published by Drawn and Quarterly, What is a Glacier, and The War of Streets and Houses. She received the Scott Moncrief Prize for her translation of Dominique Goblet's Pretending is Lying, and she has been a MacDowell Colony Fellow. She teaches in the MFA in Comics program at the California College of the Arts. Welcome, Sophie. And last but not least, we have Jeniifer Liebnitz. Jeniifer Liebnitz is a School of Visual Arts alumni and a BFA with a BFA in cartooning. She currently writes and illustrates her long-running comic Asadia. She storyboards and backgrounds for indie animation projects such as a Times Square ad for Gamer Sups and animated music videos by the band The Ghost Club. She goes to various conventions and sells prints, charms, stickers, and of course, comics. She loves all things creepy, funny, and weird, and when she's not working on her comic, she's taking care of her cats and watering her many plants. Welcome, Jenny. All right, so I'd like to start us off just by taking a look. Like I've said a few words about your work, but I would like to, just in your own words, I have a selection of some of your images just to hear you give some context and talk about kind of your work as you feel about it and as you kind of as you represent it. So I want to start with Tommi.
Okay, yeah. Well, I've been involved with comics since like maybe mid-90s. Like really as an artist. Before that, we used to do fanzines with my friend, but they were mostly about music. Like that was like when I was a teenager, and but I was like a comic reader back then. But when I went to art school, I met some people who made fanzines there with only on comics. So I joined them, and kind of like I didn't really plan to become a comic artist. I just like ended up. Planning to become a typographer or something else. I was studying graphic design back then and all that. So, but anyway, then because I had this fanzine background, I was an editor. I ended up publishing stuff and then making exhibitions. And I moved to Helsinki and joined the Helsinki Festival stuff and was creating the foreign exhibitions there and ended up publishing, forming a publishing house because no one was publishing the books I was reading in Finland. So it was kind of like a chain reaction somehow. But so.
Thank you, Tommi. All right, and hand it over to Whit. Oh, I'm sorry. That is.
Oh, wait, nope.
No, sorry. I did mean to hand over to Whit. I apologize.
Hi. So I've always been into reading comics since I was a kid, and just kind of informally doodled and whatnot. And I didn't realize that I could like even have a career in comics, so I kind of went a different path. I got a bachelor's in anthropology, and then got an MPH, did some teaching, like anything that's like not comics. But the entire time I was drawing comics in all of my spare time, and eventually just kind of decided that that's what I wanted to do, and that's what I was going to put all of my attention to, and I'm happy for that. So yeah, I just started going to shows over like 15 years ago, and just tabling and self-publishing zines and mini comics, and then over time starting to work with more people. And I became an editor too, so I've edited for the Nib, and I've done some books for like First Second and Street Noise and stuff like that. And I think editing is really valuable too, in terms of I feel like I've learned a lot just from working with other artists too, and I think that's also kind of channeled back into my own work. But yeah, I write about like everything. I love doing memoir, autobio, comics journalism is my other love. Especially with a focus on public health, since I have a background in that. Yeah.
Thank you, Whit. All right. I'm going to bring him back around. Sorry about that, Sophie. To Sophie.
I guess as far as my journey, I did like a studio art degree. I don't know, I was trying to paint and draw, and then I just ended up doing a lot of independent studies with printmaking teachers who were like, I don't really know about comics, but you can do some. And so I started making, mini comics out of school and tabling at shows like this. And tried making science fiction full color comics. And I don't know, I did one of those that was like 30-something pages and hated it. And then I started making autobiographical sort of mini comics. And that led me oddly into nonfiction, and then from there I kind of circled back and started doing fiction. So it's been this winding way of style and content, I suppose. Yeah, that's.
Thank you, Sophie. All right, and Jenny.
Hi. So yeah, this is like my first time doing anything like this, so I'm like, but yeah, I graduated School of Visual Arts in 2020, and I've been working on my comic for, since, before I went to School of Visual Arts, I've just been kind of picking away at it, and any chance I can get, I would work on my comic, like, I would use school assignments to be an excuse to work on my comic, because I really just wanted to get my stories out there and everything, but yeah, I'm really passionate about just writing stories about weird stuff, and it basically, like, a lot of my stories are kind of inspired by, like, loosely by my own life. I mean, obviously, like, they're a little extreme compared to my own life, but I, spice it up a bit. But yeah.
No, thank you very much, Jenny.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so to start us off on this topic of maximalism. Oh boy, one more time. Let's take another run through it. Maximalism and minimalism. Okay, I would like to, let's just go down the line. Do any of you have any feelings about any visceral reactions? Do any of you self-identify as a maximalist or minimalist? Is that a label that you just do not want nothing to do with?
Well, me, I remember my teacher would always tell me that I tried to fit as much information as I possibly could onto one page, and, I remember a lot of other people would be like, oh, you got too much on there, it's distracting, but, I don't know, I like to put as much information as I can onto a page, it's just something I've always liked to do, because I just like to, also, I don't like to waste paper, too, because, I used to be a traditional artist, too, and paper's expensive, so I would try to fit just everything I could onto one page, so, yeah.
Tommi?
Yeah, I think I would say I'm a maximalist. Yeah, it goes back to my childhood. I remember I enjoyed really a lot, really detailed, huge images that I could watch for hours. And it kind of ended up in my own drawing as well. So I started from left upper corner and filled the page, and it's still there. And I'm struggling with that because I would like to be also a minimalist in a way. So and try to use this both as a way to narrate. Anyway, I still enjoy filling out all the empty space.
Mm. Yeah, thank you, Tommi. Whit?
I think I'm a minimalist. I don't know. A big formative comic for me was Archie comics. I just love the cartoonishness of it and the just the slickness of the lines, and I don't know. I don't have a background in art, honestly. I was always someone who took classes informally, did some community college classes, supplemental classes, and things like that. But I'm mostly self-taught, which has been good, but also I've had a lot of roadblocks that I've kind of had to cross over time, and I wonder if going to art school would have made me maybe approach those things more efficiently. But I feel good about where I am. I feel like I've kind of circled back to where I started, where I was doing a lot of hatching, and it was starting to get a little bit busier. And then I just started streamlining it, and it just feels the most natural to me. Honestly, some of my favorite comics are the ones that are the quickest to make. Another reason I think too is because, especially my more recent work, having young kids, it's I have very little time, so I've had to become efficient for that reason, and had to be very thoughtful about what I'm choosing to put on the page. So I don't know. I feel like it's been a good path for me, and I hope to just keep refining it.
Thank you. And Sophie?
Yeah, I guess I'm a minimalist. But I think it's interesting. So yeah, before, there was a time, I don't know, when I was early 20s, had graduated school and was trying to make work, and I was making stuff that was where I was drawing in every background, and I was doing the whole thing, and then through the grapevine of comics, I heard from somebody that I respected, they were like, well, she really knows how to draw clearly, but, you know, she kind of needs to find her voice. And so I was like, okay, I just got to make tons of comics. And so I started like a daily comics, like journal comics practice. And in order to do that, I was very like, okay, I'm going to just spend 30 minutes. You know, I just want to make sure that I churn through like a large quantity. So I think by doing that, I kind of started to go down this much more minimalist path. And then as time has passed and I'm kind of feel less like I'm learning how to do the writing part, I feel like I've put a little bit more back in, but now it's much more like, I guess I'm very influenced by like manga artists or European artists like Christoph Blaine, who like use detail but use it in very specific moments and sort of drop it out when it's not, you know, you've established the space to a degree. And
Oh, I'm very glad that you brought that up, because that is one thing I'm very curious about, is how each of you kind of feel about like establishing a sense of place. Just for one example that you sent, Sophie, was the scene where you do drop out the entire background until it is necessary that you kind of show this journey they go on. It's like focus is on their character interaction, and then once they kind of decided on a path, you get to enjoy that path. And similarly, the way you're able to use like the backdrop here, it's both a I find it like really like it's both maximalist, minimalist. Like you were using like very simple units like an Ed Emberley, but like really just filling the space and creating a sense of space. And Whit, I'd like to kind of go. Speaking on kind of sense of place, like what is it, how do you feel about like when you want to, like what is important to you in establishing a sense of place in a comic?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like a lot of my comics have been driven by writing. I've always, you know, I used to call myself like a writer who draws, and I don't know if I would call myself that anymore, but I don't know. It's hard to say. Like in this one, for instance, I really wanted to focus on the shift of facial expressions, and just like the transition from, you know, putting your kid to sleep to like just looking at how ragged you are after, and trying to just include the things that I thought were important, like a mirror and stairs, and just showing like the transition through the house. So, I mean, like with this or even my nonfiction work, I'm trying to figure out how to say things as efficiently as possible, and also to use images that add more context and more storytelling instead of just repeating exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah. And is that like, what about, for instance, something that's a bit more kind of, you know, lush, like this sequence? Like, is this something like a conscious departure from like you're focused less on, you know, like expression because there's no people in the scene, but
right. I feel like this comic, Montana Diary, was actually one of my more minimal comics. I mean, maybe this page doesn't show it, but I definitely changed up my style for that one, again because of lack of time, because I had a newborn. But like, I actually just did really loose sketches, and then I just light boxed over them and was very like mindful about the lines that I was actually going to continue with. So.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, if there is something like. I'm a believer that the conversation is more interesting when you guys are talking to each other rather than me squawking. So like if there's something that gets brought up you want to respond to, please do feel free to take the mic from me. But while we're talking about like, again, sense of place, minimalism, being efficient, I want to kind of go over to the other side with Jenny, where like one of the scenes that really struck me is the kind of the interior of the house. Can you describe kind of what's happening in this scene?
Oh yeah, so like this is just an establishing shot of like one of my characters. Her name is Daisy. This is her house, and this is when my character Violet first like enters the house, and I really just wanted to show the chaoticness of everything that's going on here. You know, like the ducks, the animals, the gnomes, like whatever the heck it is, you know, and and I just love to add texture, like grit, like dirty, like, to show that it's not like the cleanest face, but it's also not dirty. It's not like gross, but it's, it's just, yeah.
It's as clean as you can with a
Yeah.
bunch of wild foul around.
Right, exactly. And yeah, like I'll have like a big establishing like shot, and then like the next panels, I usually like to have a little background there, but it doesn't have to be like a really detailed thing. It could just be like kind of simple, just show like the wallpaper or something, so yeah.
Yeah, and Tommy, kind of, your work is very interesting in that regard, because you will, within itself, as I mentioned, we were all kind of, let's skip a little ahead, and like, there are certain points where like, you start with a very plain backdrop, but then you very quickly like decide you want to fill it occupy it with where figurative elements start to become like, take the place of the background. They are kind of subsuming the whole scene. How do you feel about kind of like establishing kind of place in your comics?
Well, when I start my comic, it's always like text first, and then I start to sketch it. But I do the first sketches like in really small size, like I can barely draw it in that size. So, and those sketches, they don't have any space, or they only have the characters, maybe some directions of like movement, or some like direction of the face or stare or something like that. So in a way, this like space, it comes after the characters. But I mean, like in specifically like in this comic, this about Samuel, this character, it's totally mute. There, the environment and the landscapes, they become really part of the story actually. But it's often that these kind of like spaces, they reflect the emotions of the character. So they kind of like get born out of the character in a way. But of course I'm using this like as also like not only to support the story, but to go against the story somehow at some points. So.
And how does that compare to like something where you are a little bit more kind of using kind of less of that kind of like small spaces building up and sequencing to something like a larger, lusher kind of scene like this?
Well, this image is from my latest work, The Future, and you can see here it's I really like to draw nature. But everybody who draws knows that it's really much more easier to draw nature than like for example city landscape or something like that. So, but it's also like that nature is really important for me. So I got plenty of like comics where there's no characters at all. It's only like the space. But yeah, in here I really wanted to create this like this happens in the city of Centra. It's kind of like a city I was dreaming of like 10 years ago. I went back to the city like many times, and it was like really rich and kind of like dreamy, like Shangri-La place.
Mm-hmm.
And I really wanted to draw it like in its like full richness in a way. So that's why it looks like this.
Yeah, thank you. Sophie, I kind of want to swing back around to you, talking about kind of fullness, richness. I was really taken by your kind of the contrast of like the way you kind of render your city in contradictions, like again the clean lines, kind of the rhythm, the meter. Can you tell us about like your the different approach you take from something like this to War of Streets and I'm sorry, I'm blanking on War of Streets and Houses.
Yeah, well, I guess I would say that War of Streets and Houses was something that I drew in some ways out of necessity to process sort of a somewhat traumatic experience of like street protest and street violence in Montreal during the student strike. And so a lot of the drawings were very, I was just drawing pages and sort of putting them aside and drawing them and building up this stack and then editing that down. And I was lightboxing them, but I wasn't, I don't know, I wasn't being like precious about it or really concerned about the formalist qualities of, I don't know, it just felt like I I wanted to get it out rapidly also because I felt like I was writing it like for myself, but also for a lot of the other people who had kind of gone through that experience. And yeah, so I don't know, there was just sort of a rapidity that I think had a big effect. And then I did find ways to sort of play with that, like this sort of
Well, if I may, it almost looks like, where we've been talking sort of about like drawing, building up layers. Like there's a big like there's a lot of like doodle energy. I think you all kind of come from where it's like, you just start a drawing in one corner of a page and you just keep moving until you fill the page. Whereas this one definitely feels like you're kind of also doing some subtraction here.
Yeah.
Was that a conscious kind of choice as you were telling the story of kind of colonial efforts to wipe out kind of indigenous, erasure, basically?
Yeah. So there's a panel before, or a page before this, that's basically this drawing without these sort of strips removed. So it goes from that to that. I mean, I think that in the book I was writing a lot about urbanism and its relation with militarization, and I also like work sometimes doing graphic design. So I feel like this is kind of a designy way of, solving like a story problem. So yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I'm just playing with stuff and I'm like, oh, that would work. And I think with this book, there was a lot of, I was just doing it so quickly. There was a lot of just like, okay, that works. Let's keep going. Like, oh, here's a solution. Okay, let's.
Yeah. And what, so because you talk in some other way where like you are trying to draw efficiently, you're trying to like get ideas out because you don't have all the time in the world on your hands. But like go back to like some of your work on the nib, where you are packing like data, research, a lot of text, like blocks of text that move beyond kind of like panel frames. I think you're kind of already get ahead of the answer. Like, yeah, how does that work in kind of your otherwise minimalist approach? Because this definitely is a lot of information to process.
Right. To me, this feels like a somewhat minimalistic approach to the topic. One of the challenges I like, especially with like nonfiction comics, is taking information that can be really, complicated or dry or dense or just something that might not stand out to you, and then trying to figure out, all right, how do I, what does the reader need to know? How do I condense it? What do I show? How can the visuals for this add context again? So here, there's like a combination of just like still images that are examples of things. There's graphs, there's charts. I like to use sometimes, talking heads, things like that. So like playing with a variety of different types of images to get, the information across as clearly and simply as possible, especially for topics like public health, which can be pretty dry.
Nice. So there's a question I posed of you kind of before we met, and it's like the comics page, you can be described in a number of ways. Like I've heard our special guest, Joel Christian Gill, describe it as a page in a book, and where each panel is a paragraph, and each kind of element within that is like a sentence, as a way of kind of thinking about like, okay, well, you only have so much time if you can't spend forever on a finger, because a finger is essentially like a letter or a word. And there's also like anatomical kind of ways to kind of think about the page, where you have a header, a footer, you have the bleed, you have those thoughts. Is there a particular way that each of you thinks of your page? Like, is there a way to organize your thoughts on a page? Starting with you, Jenny.
Yeah, I just kind of go right into it. Like for me, I'm not really crazy into detail. Like details don't really matter to me. I just like to have like just a lot of stuff on a page, and like I think people like get what's going on. Like you don't need to really render like every single thing. Like one of my best friends from college, like she does manga, and like everything has to be beautiful and perfect all the time. Like for me, I like to just keep it kind of simple, but like when you zoom out and just look at everything as it is, like from far away, like it looks more detailed than it actually is. Because, like, I'm not, it looks like it is, but it's really not that much. It's just, like, a little, like, sometimes my hands look like nubs, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not putting that much detail in there, but yeah, I just try to get stuff on, like, just put information on the page, like, as quickly as I can, just so I don't forget the stories that I'm writing, or just, you know what I mean? Like, I just want to make it just readable, if that makes sense. So, yeah.
Thank you. Tommi?
Yeah. I plan my comics as spreads always, so that's also like I work mostly with book form, so I don't do comics from like magazines or something like that. So, and I also like I tend to use like the same size panels usually, so I'm kind of like cutting this dynamic panel play away, which indeed like it puts me more in focus with what's inside the panels and what's happening there. So when I build a spread, of course I think about like how to guide the reader from panel to panel, what happens there between, and how she or he goes from the row to row, from page to page, and from spread to another spread. So that's kind of the play I do when I'm doing comics. So I'm quite slow with making, and so I have which means I have lots of time to actually like think about this, how it works. So I'm like, there was this one spread where there was the birds. For example, there's the movement of the birds. It's kind of like guiding the reader through the panels in the direction of the reading.
Thank you. Whit?
Yeah, so I mean, formatting wise, I mean, part of it depends on like what my restrictions or restraints are, what I'm making the comic for. So like an Instagram comic where there's 10 panels maximum is going to be very different than, working on a longer form story where you're drawing it. I mean, like Instagram story I might draw on my iPad. Something like this, like I'll just draw, traditionally. So it really depends on like the type of storytelling that I'm trying to do. But for me, I mean, a big part of it too is like the mood. Like, how do you want it to feel when somebody's reading it? How do you want the rhythm of the language to fit with the art? So I'm thinking a lot about beats and rhythm and stuff when I'm writing, and then I try to kind of, yeah, I mean, that's what I'm thinking with my drawing as well. When I first started out, I would always like do like pretty straight scripts, and I've kind of like moved away from that. I think that there's a lot, like there's so many different ways to do storytelling in comics. But I think a lot of that working it on the page comes in the thumbnail process, and just playing around with like layouts and things like that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I relate a lot to Tommi's approach. I tend to stick to a grid and I kind of work straight into the grid often. Maybe if I have an outline or some like a free write that I've done where I'm kind of like, okay, I'm going to put this in here. But I guess I'm willing to like break the grid sometimes. This is sort of an exception. This is at the very beginning of this book. So yeah, I guess with this, I kind of felt like, okay, I'm going to do something a little crazy for me, and, but then it kind of brings you into something that's much more grid-based. Even though I do at times play with it a little bit, I very much think of it as like this is sort of the standard, and we can deviate from the standard. But this is I like to pour my story into a grid and mess with that.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, no, I do the same exact thing too. Like I don't really script. I just kind of like go in with a grid, and I just
No, that's wonderful. Like, and it was so interesting to hear like the fact that you don't consider your work detailed. It just that's something that sort of comes through the process of working.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I kind of want to. Yes, Tommi.
Yes, just please. Saying that I'm as well like with the panels. I mean, say that I'm using the same size panels usually. I'm also breaking it sometimes, but these kind of limitations, they're really important for me, at least when I work. Well, when I say limitations, it's actually not a limitation. It's more like puts me more like in focus in the actual work. What's happening there when I have like less tools to like in the narration. So that's how I feel. I don't know if it's
like a
same with you.
constraint.
Yeah.
That is more generative.
Yeah.
And I think that for me, this is one that really shows it. Like the fact that like you're using the same panel arrangement, but within that you're starting to play with like you have that first kind of block of 4 where it is just divided in 4. It can be read clockwise, and then you have the next one that it gets more narrative based, where you're actually starting to kind of move from beat to beat, and then by the time you kind of slip down to the bottom, you've then changed around, and now it's moving. It's moving in a lateral fashion. So even though you're creating these blocks that of like rigid grids, you're finding interesting ways that like kind of challenge the reader. Like
in a way, yeah. This was published in as 4 panels per page in the book, so it's here like a bit different. But
this is displayed different than the reader would experience, and it's very interesting. Yeah.
But anyway, yeah.
Oh no, thank you. And it's because it also comes up again, like, and the way you again. Is this another one where there was 4 panels per page?
Yeah.
But again, just the way that you're able to like use the grid and continue it. Like the grid is kind of almost nominally there because you're moving left to right, and there's even some continuation with like the lines of the track field, and once you get to like the 3rd row and you're moving kind of very left to right, almost again like it could be in real time, but then by the time you get to this bottom row, it actually kind of gets a little terrifying because suddenly you're breaking that, and the road is you've got diagonals, you've got all these kind of different angles moving, and I think it's really it's really amazing how you can like create a lot of startling excitement through what is kind of for most people like a very like staid.
I think it's because I use this like same size panels. It's sort of a play I can like play with, and also like it's about time as well, because the panels are the same size, so basically like the time goes at the same pace all the time. Yeah, in a way, and then when you know that, you can break it and start to play with the time inside the comic, and it's kind of like,
time is the thing that comes up most in when I look at your work. There's a very, and actually if I can just kind of go to like this one where you are deliberately playing with time, like you go from like moment to moment to like suddenly you're in a different area, and like you don't know how much time is passing, but then you go back to like individual sequences where it's like one beat, suddenly you're outside, suddenly maybe hours have passed, and then you get to this very freeing kind of large panorama here.
Crazy large.
Yeah. But Sophie, I kind of want to, because we were talking about grids, that's something that I wanted to talk about with your work, because especially with, I am not navigating this correctly. Let's see. Time, but also like volume. Like in some of your work, there is like this, I feel a certain tension created sometimes where just by using a very like classic 6-panel grid and like sparse language, like I find that fourth panel like very kind of anxiety inducing as somebody that has a lot of like is always worried about upsetting somebody. Like for me, that like it's that awkwardness of like you've had a fight with somebody that you're on a trip with. You're in a foreign country that should be fun, and now things have gone wrong. How do you kind of think about silence and volume and time?
I don't know, silence rules. I feel like this is something, I don't know, I don't necessarily actively think about, like when I was making this page, how this was going to pan out, like, or how the moment to moments would go. I think it's something that after doing so many 6-panel pages, I kind of have internalized some of it, and so it just helps with the rhythm of thinking through a page like this. Yeah, I don't know. This is one that I feel I'm like, yeah, I think it works, but I don't know. Like it was fun to make, and I feel good about it.
No, thank you. Jenny, how do you feel about? Sorry, I'm gonna try to find a good. How do you feel about silence? Because some of your comics seem very loud.
Yeah, they are.
But
I don't do a lot of silence. Like I only use silence if it's like a really emotional kind of thing. Like if it's like a melancholy, like sadness or something, I'll have no words on the page because I always like to have some kind of dialogue, some kind of talking. But yeah, I feel like silence is super important, because like sometimes less is more. I always feel like less is more. So, and I used to have this problem where I would have too much like text on a page. Like I would put way too much words. Like the entire panel would just be like words, and it would just be terrible. And I've learned that that's not good. So I try to keep my words to a minimum now, as just try to have as much as I need. But yeah, I feel like silence is very good when it's necessary.
Oh, Tommi? Did you have a? Oh,
No.
I'm sorry, misread. So we're kind of getting towards the end. I want to make sure we leave time for questions, but I want to go kind of one more through the line because we're talking about style. We're talking about kind of the way, and it's a lot of it has been me like, ooh, this is kind of what I think about your work. But I kind of want to spin that around. Like, is there a way that kind of your work has been talked about? Like, Jenny, you kind of got into that a little bit, and I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more. Like, is there a label or description that's been put on your style that you've either like really embraced, try to push away from, have a relationship with?
I mean, I remember like my cartooning chair at my like old school. Like he was like, "Oh yeah, your work gives me a headache," but I don't care. I like it. A lot of people say it's very like, because I love Art Deco style, and I like to make my panels kind of like, I like symmetry, and I just like to just make everything look neat and tidy on a page, So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, there's been like many labels in the past, but I think since I started to like experiment with styles and like create styles for each project, like purposely, like I mean, like when I have an idea for a comic, I develop the style around this idea, how to deliver this like message or like story the best way. That's how the style is born. So, but this, of course, like most of the readers, they expect the same from an artist. They want the same always. So it's been a problem for some people that I'm chasing all the time, and it's not a problem for me because it keeps me motivated with my work, and it's really important, of course, to enjoy your drawing and making. So, in the past, they used to say that I don't have a style, because that I'm just like playing with styles, and but I never thought that my identity as an artist would be in the style. It's more in the message or like what I'm dealing with. It's like just like basic things in life. So that's But now when I've done it like for 15 years maybe, like using different styles all the time, so people are getting used to it. So maybe it's not a problem anymore.
Thank you.
I guess, I mean, I feel like my style or my drawing has been polarizing for some, and that's fine. I think that, especially in the beginning, I would get like, this is, amateurish, like it looks like it was done really quickly, and it's like, well, some things are done quickly, and I think that's perfectly fine if you want to do that. But I also feel like I do put a fair amount of thought into my drawing, even if it looks deceptively simple. And so, often people think I'm making kids work, but the themes usually aren't for kids. So I get a lot of that where people are like, oh, this is like just line work, like simple line work. So it must be like a less, mature sort of work or something like that. But I feel like in recent years, there's kind of been, things have gone in a different direction where I feel like as I've become more confident in myself as a creator, that has shown in terms of how people are perceiving my work. And strangely enough, like I said, like recently I've been finding that some of my quickest, sloppiest comics are the ones that people like the most. So I'm just like, okay, like it's really hard to predict. You can put a lot of time and effort into something and not have a response, or you can sometimes do something very quickly and that can have a better, feedback or whatever. So I just really, yes, have to do something that's important to you. Just make the work that speaks to you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I relate to a lot of what you just said, but I don't know. These days I avoid reading Goodreads and reviews and all of that stuff, so I don't really know what people say. But yeah, it has been interesting, I guess. I mean, I do feel my style has changed quite a bit over the years, and like it used to be much looser, and now it's gotten pretty tight. And I don't know, the thing that I'm working on now is pretty loose again, and I think also content-wise, it's like, yeah, autobio and then nonfiction and then fiction, and like I just worked on like Adventure Time, which is like totally, nobody would associate those things, but I'm like, well, yeah, I also play D&D. I don't know, like, so I think it's more of like a content weird, thing that it trying to sort of not keep the mantle of whatever one book gives you, between that and the next one.
Thank you all so much for your honest answers, and yeah, I would like to open up the room to questions. Anybody have any questions for our panel creators? Yes.
I had this really like I did a fellowship that was very multidisciplinary, so there were all these different types of artists there, and somebody read my work while I was there, and they were like, oh, your comics, they were a playwright, and they were like, oh, your comics are like plays, and I was like, oh yeah, in the contradictions, there's like one shot that's this close, maybe two in the whole thing, and like it's yeah, they have dot eyes, and so I do feel like when you choose that way of drawing, some things change about it. Like it is, it's a little more removed, and maybe you have to think about it more like a play than like film or something. So, yeah, that was an interesting reflection.
Any other? Oh, yes, Tommy.
Yeah, I can tell about this Samuel comic that you had some images there. It's this white coast-like character that's totally like mute comic. Actually, I created this character like it was just for like exercising how to express emotions through body language. So, and when I decided to use it for a comic, and it ended up into a book, another book, and now there's a third book coming out. But there's like one rule that he shouldn't have any expressions on his face. So all the what he actually does in the world it's like a statement. It presents his values in life, and so but it's of course like it's difficult because he cannot really express himself through the face at all. So.
All right. Sorry. Yeah. There was an hand I saw over here earlier. Thank you. Oh my gosh.
I mean, I guess like people have told me like that my work was like, they came home and they read it and it made them like happy, and honestly that makes me happy. So I'm glad that I get to brighten someone's day, even though yeah. But is that like what you mean, like or yeah.
Okay. I feel like audience is helpful to me for committing to a project. Like, I come up with different ideas and I'll work through something, like the contradictions with that story, I'd been working on it for a long time, and I was kind of like, I don't know, I have these thumbnails, and I shared the thumbnails with a couple of friends who were also kind of in the like anarchist, lefty, queer scenes, but in various countries. And a couple of them were like, they were both like, I totally identify with this story, you know, like, and I think just having those two people be like, I am from totally different scenes or totally different parts of the world with similar scenes, and I relate to this story, then I was kind of like, okay, I'll go for this, you know? And I think similarly with War Streets and Houses, when I was working on it, I was very surrounded by like the community of people that I was kind of writing for myself and writing for. So I do think that, yeah, it helps me commit to a story. So I guess somewhere in the middle of the process.
Yeah, I mean, I would say similar. It also depends on like the type of project. So for nonfiction things, often I'm like, who's my audience? Like, you know, writing something for a general public is different than maybe writing something for people who specialize in something or who have a certain level of knowledge about something. So, for instance, like making a public health comic about a pandemic, I generally want to make it as simple and user-friendly as possible because you want the most people to read it and understand it. So thinking about like people's literacy levels and things like that. But then for like other projects like, you know, autobio, memoir, stuff like that. I mean, the audience is maybe in my mind somehow, but it's usually just something that I feel is like important that I need to express and process through making comics.
Like, I try to make my characters like as kind of relatable as possible, so like people can like see themselves in these characters. I mean, obviously I have a character that's an alien. I mean, that's not what I mean, but like, yeah. So you know, my one character, like, you know, she has a job she doesn't like. You know, she has to deal with like roommates she doesn't like, and if anybody could just see themselves in this character and just like relate to it and make them like smile, like that just makes me happy when I see that, because like I just, you know, like making people laugh. You know, so.
Yeah. Tommi, did you have a...
Yeah, I think for me it's I kind of try to trust my work in a way that if my work raises some emotions in me when I'm making it, it should like somehow affect the reader as well. But I'm also playing with this kind of like that. What's the limit of understanding? Sometimes I go really over the limit. I just like try to fool the reader, like confuse him or her. And sometimes I'm trying to be really fluent with the storytelling and kind of like play with this because I deal with like complex themes in life. So.
Nice, thank you. So some questions over here. Yes, please.
Yes, I have, definitely. Like, I've done comics where I had way too much going on, and I've went back and I just removed, like, entire pages. Like, so my panels are mostly square, and so, like, I'll go into Photoshop and I'll just, like, delete one of those squares, and I'll have to move, like, each square over again, and just, like, until, like, the panels are, like, back to normal again, and then sometimes I'll add something just so the page looks good. But, yeah, I've taken stuff out before, and, that's kind of what happens, because I don't usually script that much. I kind of just jump in, and then I realize I have too much information in this jarbled mess of scribbles. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I also like sometimes take away something, but it usually ends up with that I'm also adding something more in. So, but yeah, but I work on paper, so it's more complicated in a way, going back to the original.
Yeah, when I used to work on paper, I would actually take like an X-Acto knife, and I would cut out the panels and like put another piece of paper under it, and like tape it, and then redraw on that piece of paper, like cut and paste arts and crafts stuff.
What I often do is that I redraw the whole panel actually. So.
All right.
My teacher always said like don't add anything that's not necessary. Like they always taught me like, or everybody's. If it's not necessary, it's like not always important. Just don't put it in.
That's what my teacher as well said.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a common message in comics: efficiency, economy. Oh, I saw a hand. Yeah.
question. Yeah, definitely. There's some stories that I might be interested in writing, but I don't want to draw. And I think that's good to know when to know that too. Like I've collaborated with artists before. Like one of my books I have here is a Harriet Tubman biography. And I was like, I don't think that's like necessarily in my wheelhouse to draw. And I also had other projects I was doing, so I was like, I actually, it's way easier for me to write a script than to do the art for that. And I wanted to focus on some other projects doing art. But I mean, with each project, I try to push myself doing something different. But I think, yeah, it also is good to know when maybe something's not the right thing for you to draw, and there's no shame in that.
I guess I feel like part of the fun of drawing in a sort of reductive style is figuring out how to draw things. So, I mean, there's never going to be like the platonic ideal version of it in your style, but then it's kind of like, okay, I drew a car. I guess that's what cars look like in this book, you know? Like, you kind of create the icon and move forward.
Nice. Any other questions? Oh, yes, in the back. The difficulty focusing on natural objects. Have you ever played with that in your art? Oh, and no, this is for the panel.
Not yet.
I mean, like, sometimes, like, it'll look kind of weird when it's on, like, a big page, but then when it'll be printed smaller, it looks better. For my own work, yeah.
I guess I have kind of a funny, like, so there's a scene at the end of The Contradictions that takes place in a McDonald's. And so throughout the book, in a lot of the little cityscapes, you know, there's not a whole lot of, I mean, I guess in some of those panels there's detail, but there'll be like little McDonald's, like, logos in the background. And some of that was kind of like, for people who haven't, I don't know, maybe been to Europe, and it's like, yeah, there's McDonald's there, and they're throughout. So I don't know, this is just it was a funny thing where I was like, I need to like make sure that, you know, you're in this Parisian landscape, but like there's a little McDonald's in the background to help set up the the scene later.
It's also sometimes how it feels as an American traveling. It's like you're overstimulated by all this like new culture, and it's like, oh, something domestic. Sorry, any last answers to that? All right. Well, then I think we are good on time. So I would like to thank all of you for attending our Maximalism and Minimalism panel, and our guests, Jeniifer Liebnitz, Tommi Musturi, Whit Taylor, and Sophie Yanow. All right. There's not a whole lot of time left. In mice, but please go out and enjoy all that is there. And just for, if you want to catch our panelists, here are, let me just jump all the way to the end. You may find them at the following tables. Thank you. Thank you so much, Tommi. It's so great to hear you talk.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, great work.